You were saying?
No, I was just saying that. Do you know Chuck Palahniuk, the author?
I just know of his name due to Fight Club.
Right. So he wrote Fight Club. No, I think the story is he actually wrote a book called Invisible Monsters first,
Hmm.
while he was working at a car factory or something. And after work, he frequently went to a bar where he arranged actual fight clubs, probably because he was bored,
Yeah.
I think. And he was writing a book called Invisible Monsters, and he was trying to pitch it to different publishing companies and just got refusal after refusal. And it was just in this space of being rejected. And he wrote Fight Club basically as a fuck you manifesto, just to um, try to I don't know, I'm just guessing, but in a way, just to get out that aggression or disappointment. And all of a sudden he had a book, so he pitched Fight Club to the same publishing companies, and they loved it. So they published Fight Club, it was a hit, and then Invisible Monsters was the second book.
Got it.
Yeah. And he was one of the first, I think, or at least one of the first that I noticed when I saw Fight Club the first time. Was When was it? 98,
Yeah, something like
99.
19. Yeah, around
Um,
that time.
I was in high school,
Yeah.
and I remember there was a review of that movie in a local newspaper. Um, and the film critic gave the movie a 2 out of 5 and called it a pointless action uh, catastrophe or something like that. So I wrote a review. I think I was in 8th grade or something. I wrote a review on his review and gave him a 1 out of 5 because he was dumb.
Yeah.
I still think he's dumb because Fight Club is not about, it's not an action movie. It's an action format. It's a movie about being a man in a modern world, being lost in purpose, being lost in identity, meaning, and trying to reconnect with your warrior, with your wild man, with your power.
Yeah, you're dark masculine.
Of course. And also, I think there's a lot of um, subversive or anti-capitalistic ideas in that movie as well. I don't think it's in an ideological sense. It's more of a existential critique against the machine replacing cocks with plastic. Uh, Hence the ending of Fight Club, right?
Yeah.
I don't think I'm spoiling it.
I think
It's like
we're beyond that
spoiling
debate now.
Titanic.
Yeah. So, I mean, on the topic, and I mean, it's definitely one of the. I remember watching it as well, and I've been watching it many times over the years. It's certainly one of those movies that awakes something inside of the viewer, especially I think definitely if you're a man, most likely if you are of any gender and sex, just due to its beautiful artistic portrayal of exactly what you're talking about, the consumeristic pointlessness of existence and life,
Yeah.
and the lack of like a real experience in our world and in society. And I'm just curious to hear, that came out 99. Now we're in 2024. Do you think it's more or less relevant today than it was when it came out?
More. I mean, a lot more. But the public discourse has radically changed because when Fight Club came out, even though it had that Trojan message, it had that embedded message of trying to bring up the discussion about masculinity and meaning, and basically what it is to be a modern man striving to be more civilized but not losing the connection with your roots. I mean, 98, 99. I don't know if you remember, there was a lot of other political topics that drew much more attention. I remember the whole anti-capitalistic movement was very vital. The left was smart, intellectual, and not that easy to offend as the people who call themselves leftists are today. That's a whole nother podcast.
Mhm.
But there was a lot of, punk rock music, especially from Sweden. We had groups like Refused, who were globally acknowledged as like top-notch hardcore vegan straight edge punks. Like, still I see movies where they have the intro to a song called New Noise, which is still the most warrior like intro of a song I ever heard. But today I don't even know where the punk bands or the hardcore scene is at. I don't meet people who have the X on their fists. I don't. And I know that the formats for political engagement changes over time, of course, but maybe it moved to forums or to the internet, or a cynical part of me also think that a layer of it is has been transformed into collectivism. Like, if I put a black square on my Instagram, I show solidarity with black people. No, you don't. You haven't done shit. You haven't even left your house. That's not activism. That's nothing. It's air. Because when we did something that we believed in, we actually put time and effort and we took risks. We went out on the streets and we showed our disappointment, our frustration with our bodies, with our voices. We wrote articles and we tried to actually make a change and not only push the like button. I think a lot has changed and it's a totally different landscape. Um, and just as a thought experiment, what would you think if a movie like Fight Club was um, premiered today?
I believe that if it came today, I mean, the way I see Fight Club is definitely a form of rebellious, active activation movie. And I, just by looking at it and feeling into the movie's soul, and feel this like explosive energy connected towards it. And where I could see, I mean, that's what I why I was sort of what I was tapping into there was looking at the ending of Fight Club and what they actually accomplished towards the end. I mean, they obviously create change. They blow the whole thing to the ground.
Mm.
And where I'd like to see, it's just that they're using a lot of Mortido energy. I'm sure you know and are aware of the differences there between libido and Mortido.
Mm.
And it's something I've noticed as
Libido is the strive for life, and
strive for
Mortido is
life.
strive for death. Yeah.
Exactly that. And there I like looking into the men's work today and men's movement, I am beginning to see that there are two camps really. There are the ones who are not only waiting for the war, but also I sense a longing for the war. In different ways. They are preparing for some ultimate destruction of society, and they are preparing themselves for a warlike scenario.
Literally or symbolically?
I think both,
Yeah.
like some more literally,
Yeah.
like some all the way, you know,
Mm-hmm.
preparing in that stance. Others think of it more as a energetic war, energetic
Right.
a place where we'll have a big, massive change.
Yeah. Something to fight for.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I can sense that there's for many have been, you know, in that mindset of thinking for so long that they have connected their sense of purpose, life purpose towards it and waiting for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a libido energy and the other types of men who acknowledge the need for improvement in society, acknowledge the need for a realignment of our values as a human species. Are we running for profit first or value first? Value first, meaning we whatever we do, the companies we create, our behavior is driven by ultimately a need to create value for the world, for
Right.
those that we love,
Mm-hmm.
for ourselves, for others, and then profit.
Yeah.
And I believe that little switch alone is going to create, once that switch really takes place and happens in people, you're going to have not a destruction of society, but a complete reformation of society towards a better world, not necessarily including a war in that way. And I'm just, when I think of Fight Club, I think about the Mortido energy.
Mm.
And I have, because we all have both energies inside of us,
Yeah.
the big want and need for life and the big need for death. And they're both tempting, of
Yeah.
course. Sometimes I believe, I personally, I like that sense of drawing towards the death and but there yeah, if this came today, this movie, I I think it would receive a reaction which is um mature, a suggestion like we need something more mature, a mature approach towards what is needed. We know of the problems of the world. What we are striving for and looking for today is actually men who can drive and provide leadership and say, okay, where do we go from here and how do we build from here?
Mm. Yeah. I think we're gonna see both. I think we're actually seeing both. I don't think there's an either or. A friend of mine who's been researching radicalism and radicalized groups for 30 years now, both religious and ideological groups, once told me that you could see two flows in the world. It's parallel, and they're both very strong, and they feed each other, and they're kind of reactions to each other, almost like polarities. And it's a hyper progressive movement and a hyper conservative movement. And the world has always been like this, but now when it's all interconnected, we sense the movements and the nuances of the changes more because it's almost like, a spider web. The spider can sense the vibrations from the edges of the web because they move through the web. And I think that's a good way, a metaphor to understand what the internet is. And we're all spiders in this web. And if a spider on the other side of the world um, get contaminated or is receives a virus from, let's say, a bat,
Mm.
that vibration or that virus will move through the web in a different manner than before, because before we were just scattered spiders with no web, um, living in small tribes and then smaller villages and then cities and regions. The region was a web in itself, as was the city and the village and the tribe, but now it's like a tribe of tribes. It's like that's the global web. Maybe that's why it's called the World Wide Web.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say here is really that both need to exist. That and both is what creates evolution.
I don't know about needs to exist. I just think that they do.
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like that as well. And this idea of either or, I believe, is a rather naive way of looking at life as well.
Yeah, it's a false dichotomy. It's not
Exactly.
true.
No, we have everything inside of us,
Yeah.
and also whatever the state of the world is inside of me.
Yeah.
So, in order to solve whatever I believe needs to be solved, I first need to acknowledge that okay, right now we have two or three conflicts in the world happening at the same time simultaneously. Dive deep into myself and say what inside of me is causing the Israel-Palestine conflict,
Hmm.
and noticing that we are all in that way collectively as one unit.
Hmm.
Hmm. We're coming right into a beautiful conversation here, and I want to just take a beautiful step back.
Sure.
Not sure if it's beautiful, and also that I'm sitting, but just welcome everybody to the podcast. How do men? And this podcast has an intention to build conversation, to co create, co learn, and ultimately do all of this in order to find solutions, tools, and concrete tips for the modern man.
Hmm. I
And
like that.
yes, that's what we're here to do, and to highlight some of the rules or principles that we strive to adhere to in the podcast. We're listening in to like before every conversation, we're reaching out to you, the listeners, to ask for advice, suggestions, comments, thoughts, challenges of things that you want us to talk about. And from those comments, we select and build out every program. So I just want to thank everybody that has suggested things, come up with different solutions or suggestions for this episode together with my beautiful friend Navid Modiri.
Happy to be here.
Very happy to have you here. I mean, Navid, you're a writer, speaker, podcaster, the author of Jag kan ha fel with Björn Nattikho.
I may be wrong. There's actually an English version of that book flying around the world.
I may be wrong.
Hmm.
Yeah. You're also the host of Hur kan vi, the podcast,
Yeah.
and Mandomsprovet. How would you say Mandomsprovet in English? Uh,
Oh, what do you call that? It's that initiation between boy and man.
Something like that.
Yeah. Um,
Exactly. Men's initiation test.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
an initiation to become a man. And hur kan vi is Swedish for how can we,
Exactly.
which is basically, I was inspired by podcasts, long form podcasts from Joe Rogan, Russell Brand, Sam Harris, and inviting that kind of format and approach to the public discourse in Sweden. So we started that podcast in the beginning of 2018. And the premise was, let's talk about the things that are difficult, that are the base of conflict, friction, um, and polarization, and let's talk with the people that we're not supposed to talk to, and invite thinkers, uh, shouters, activists, provocateurs from different walks of life and ideological perspectives to a respectful and powerful dialogue.
Mm.
And let's not cut anything out. Let's not edit it and just presume that people are mature and conscious enough to think themselves. We don't need to tell people what to think. And we did that for 5 years. I think that podcast changed me in the core. Um, I didn't know what I was diving into. I never do. I do, and then I think, and I evaluate, and I see all my shadows, my errors, and I mean, I feel scared a lot. I feel a lot of uncertainty and anxiety because choose the I often choose the road less taken, to paraphrase Robert Frost's beautiful poem, um, because it's more interesting. It's more fun. I mean, if there's a path where everyone else have been, you know, walking, and there's a clear path and there's lighting, and you could see where the path is going. I mean, what's the point of that? Just following others. It's much more meaningful to contribute with the exploration of the road less taken, but it's also scary as hell.
Mm. Ah, beautiful. I mean, and thank you for opening up there a bit more about your experience with How Can We, the podcast, and I mean, I've been known you closer for some 2 or 3 weeks,
Yeah.
and this man crush is just growing. But what I'm reading and feeling from you is just I get this experience of versatility, chaos, like positive chaos, and being that you're a man in the arena.
Yeah.
You're not a bystander who looks upon others. You're actually one of the people that you throw yourself into the challenge,
Yeah.
and knowing that you will fail, seeing failure as a natural and very important part of growth and evolution.
Mm.
And I believe that is one of the reasons why I feel so called and connected towards you. I share many of those values myself, and I just want to say again, I'm super happy to have you here.
Me
And
too. It's mutual. I mean, it takes two to tango, right? Takes two men to man crush.
that's the thing.
So I told you the first time we met, it was so effortless because I didn't need to explain myself to you. I could just be myself with you, and that's nothing that I take for granted at all. That's been a really difficult thing for me to just show myself as I am, because I have not always felt welcome. Mm.
I can imagine that, and that's one of the questions that I want to listen to hear you talk a bit more about your journey into your man, which is today, you know. But before that, I want to set out in the same way we start all these conversations, which is what does being a man mean to you? And perhaps if you want, you can tie it together into how did you evolve to where you are at this point? What were some of the defining moments in that journey?
Being a man means to work and contribute and to serve something larger than myself. That's the core of it. And how I do that has changed through these 40 years and will change ahead as well. I mean, the formats, the vehicles for that journey are different, but the direction and the purpose is still, how can I serve? What is needed? Um, where are the problems, and what tools do I have, or what tools do I need to gather and master to be able to serve? One of my mentors, Björn Nattikho, who is the main character and the author of the book, I May Be Wrong, who was a Buddhist monk in Thailand for 17 years and then came back to his home country, Sweden, and started to spread his knowledge in the corporate world and arranging retreats and meditations. He has this saying that the meaning of life is to find your gift and give it away. And that question, what's the meaning of life, is one of those questions that's been around for ages. And it's sometimes a question that some teachers or people who sit on wisdom explore, some even try to answer it, but it's also a kind of it's a question that opens up for a lot of exploration and discussion and dialogue. And I think that Björn received that question a lot because of his position and his wisdom and love, and started to at least try to answer it without giving a too straight of an answer, if you know what I mean. And I think that answer, that golden nugget of his, is one of the most profound answers to that question that I've found during my um, journey. Yeah. So that's being a man, um, working for something greater than myself, striving to be in service in a bigger cause or purpose, and be supportive, protective, um, provide, um, and give to my family, my friends, my brothers, and the people I meet across the path. Yeah.
Beautiful. Hearing you say that is really about a sense of not only putting yourself out there to service, but also adapting to whatever your surrounding needs
Mm-hmm.
and learning whatever you need to learn in order to be of the best possible service for where you are right now
Mm-hmm.
and what your surrounding needs.
Yeah.
And it's almost like I know you said you mentioned tools, and it's almost like the way you see a man is that the man is a tool.
Mm-hmm.
You're
He's like almost, I think
like a screwdriver
yeah, but
or
or almost
a
like a
Swiss
Swiss
Army
Army
knife
knife,
type of
right?
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, I see the potential, and also uh, when we talk about this, I just feel like a lot of enthusiasm of all the things that I still don't know, and the abilities and capabilities and the knowledge that I haven't found yet. I mean, I'm 41. It feels like life just started, and I feel more curious and open for every year. I feel more childlike the older I get, if that makes sense. It doesn't need to make sense, but that's how it is. To find more of those tools to put in that Swiss Army knife, to be able to share them.
Mm.
There's no need to learn stuff if I'm not able to show stuff. There's no reason for me to do things for myself. I've been having this discussion with my partner with my friends, and sometimes, people say, and they say it from love, like, maybe sometime just do something for yourself. And I've tried, but I don't know how. Even when I rest, even when I go on vacation, even when I meditate, I do it to be able to show up. When I learn something, when I read a book, when I look when I watch a new documentary or listen to a podcast, I always think, when I'm done, who could benefit from this
Mm.
besides me? Or how can I invite someone? What do I need to write in an Instagram post for more people to be able to explore this golden nugget that I found, to curate, to inspire? And that's the kick for me. I was talking to a friend this morning, actually, about the notion of being famous, right? And I'm not famous in that sense, but sometimes, people approach me, and they've listened to a podcast, or they read a book, or they saw me doing something that they liked, and that's really beautiful to be acknowledged, not to get the confirmation for myself, but being acknowledged in the sense of that someone got something from it. And my daughter, when she was when she was younger, I think maybe when she was 7, 8, and sometimes I was, you know, I was doing something with her, and we were going, let's say we were going to the movies or something, and someone saw me on the street and said something nice about something that I did. And I'm kind of a shy guy, and I feel, just the first couple of minutes when someone does that, I feel kind of awkward. And after that person left, my daughter just looked at me with these sparkling eyes. It was like she felt that energy as well, and she asked me, "Oh, Dad, is it fun to be famous?" I was like, "No, it's actually quite awkward and feels weird. I'm not relaxed. I don't feel comfortable with people recognizing me. But I love when I hear that they got something from what I've done, because that confirmation gives me uh, gives me strength, gives me energy, gives me like uh, confirmation that I'm on the right path of being in service, and that things that I do actually matter to other people. But if I could go back in time to when I started, you know, speaking up, um, writing, and actually, you know, sharing my voice, my messages, my poems, my articles, my songs, my lectures. When I started early. I think I was 15 or 16. If I could go back, I think I might have not published these pieces under my real name. I think I might have had a different strategy, because it's limiting.
Mm.
Um, I would have gone on a more, I don't know, like, Banksy, or writing books under pseudonym, and actually being more free to express myself than I might have been. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And what comes up in me, and when you say this, is almost like, I mean, we've talked a lot about how the world of personal development, and whoever does a lot of this type of work on themselves, are usually met with a lot of uh, different values, such as surrender, acceptance, flow,
Mm,
and that we both agree have usually have a bit more of a feminine uh, quality
for
to
sure.
it, and a tendency,
Yeah.
right?
And also, as you said, I think it was Walt Whitman who said, "I contain multitudes."
Yeah,
So we have both the feminine,
that's
the
the
masculine
thing.
aspect within us, right? So there's nothing wrong for a man to explore feminine
Of
traits,
course.
flow, surrender, acceptance, as you and I have been doing as well. So that's not like a wrong turn or wrong path, but it could go too far. And I think in the therapeutic world and also in the personal development world, it's gone it's tilted a little bit too much to the feminine, I think.
I believe so too, and I believe that, and I think there are some very natural reasons for it as
Sure.
well. It's the fact that many women and women tend to be have spent like the majority of the personal development space is today still filled up
Yeah.
by a lot of women.
Yeah.
So it's natural to see that retreats suggestions are built and designed by women or towards geared towards someone with a more feminine essence, like
Mm.
feminine energy inside of her than a masculine. But what I hear you say here, which is very, it's almost like something vibrates inside of me because there just came up a word in me when you talked, which is surrendering to service.
Mm.
Whereas maybe the feminine is surrendering to life as a someone who cultivates a lot of masculine energy. A big part of the life journey is to surrender him or herself, mostly him, to this act of service, and really allowing for yourself to just become this tool. Because I've also noticed over the years of diving deeper that I this whole thing you said about doing things for myself, it is really, it's almost like a peel of an onion gradually falling off from myself. And at first I was resisting it a bit, because I notice it in even a lot of my friends now. Many of my friends have turned into business colleagues. I've started working together with most of my friends.
Mm.
And when I read for the sake of learning in order to grow myself and to be able to do better and to give more. And I I remember when I first started noticing this happening to me. Also, another thing is the sense of responsibility,
Yeah.
growing through having a sense of responsibility. My wife is pregnant,
Mm.
and from that moment on, in this notion, it really accelerated my sense of like, wow, okay, I have like massive responsibility now for creating as best to the best of my ability a safe space and container for my future family. And but
And also, I just want to add, I don't think that women, I mean, on a group level, of course, there's always variations, but on a group level, I don't think that women need to focus on striving for service because they are. I mean, being born as a girl or growing into be a woman is to be of service, is being nurturing, is being a caretaker, and being like a service station for this new life from like from the second of when the magic gets going and the fetus starts to grow, they are actually in service. And I think that's one of the reasons, as a man, we need to invent our own purpose. We need to invent our own project. We need to invent the service we need to be in, because it's not that obvious. A friend of mine, Erik Fernholm, once told me, we were talking about this, or a topic similar to this, and he asked me, who taught you that you would be happy by asking yourself what you want? So, who taught you that you would be happy by asking yourself what you want? He actually explained to me that asking yourself, what do I want? What do I want? What do I want? As a man is basically a gateway to depression and anxiety, because that's the wrong question. The question to ask yourself as a man is, what do they need from me? And how can I meet that need? What tools do I have right now? And what tools do I need to find to be able to serve that need outside myself? So you need to tweak that question. Asking yourself what you want as a man is being a boy. And that's fine. I mean, for a while, we're boys and we have needs, and we have mother, father, uncle, aunt, tribe, grown ups, teachers, elders to help us to fulfill our needs. But after a certain point, you're not a boy anymore. And then you need to flip that question. What do they need from me now? And how can I cultivate those um, capabilities, or have the tough and hard experiences or adventures to become the man that the world needs right now?
Yeah, very much reminds me of the early days of looking into men's work initiation rites, and I remember reading exactly that. Boys serve themselves, men serve something else, something larger than
Mm.
themselves, and also got me thinking about the boy archetypes maturing into the man archetype. So you have your divine child
Mm.
believing that the universe is completely centered around me, which is important
Yeah,
when I grow up, and
yeah,
then maturing that into the king energy. And you have
yeah,
the hero with its sense of invincibility, also a sense of slight aggression in order to be able to cut himself off the mother,
yeah,
and that growing into then the warrior energy,
yeah.
which is there to protect and also to take action.
And then from there on, from king to wise man or elder. I mean, that's also something to talk about, especially here in Sweden. I mean, where are all the elders?
I know. Where are they? Where
They're
is
sitting at home waiting for us to call them and ask them for advice. I mean, it's up to us. It is. We're not asking them for advice. We're not asking them about their experiences. We're just putting them in homes. I mean, it's depressing. I grew up. I mean, um, I was born in Iran, but we left when I was 2. So in 1985, when we came to Sweden, from there on, I had like these two parallel cultures, and I had the Persian culture at home, and I had the Swedish culture in school, or outside of my home. And what I saw early on was there was a lot of differences, and one was not only how you address and talk to elders, but also the function, the role of the elder. My grandmother, who's like, I mean, is if there's anyone that I got my warrior energy from, is my grandmother. She's 94 now. She I believe she was forced into marriage when she was 11. She had her first child when she was 14. And I think she had 8 children, and 5 are still alive. And her husband died in the 60s. So she raised 8 kids by herself, and she's like yay high. She's small but explosive. And and she's illiterate, both in Farsi and Swedish English. She cannot write, she cannot read, but she can talk. And when she talks, everyone shuts the fuck up. All the men, all the warriors, everyone is just silent and just listening to her. And she was basically the matriarch of our family, of our tribe. She still is. And when while growing up, I saw that the um, the values that I learned at home were really different than the values I learned in Swedish culture or Swedish society. Um, when I went to my friends to hang out or play, I never saw any elders. And if I did, they were just, in a room, put there with a blanket and watching TV like zombies, or put in a home somewhere. Maybe they got a visit every third month. My grandma was living with us all the time. And it has its pros and cons, of course, but I mean, now I only feel grateful for having that, and also passing that on to my daughter to look for and to ask for advice, and to invite elders to support her. Um, yeah,
I mean, completely. And this is really, I love that you brought that up. And for me, being like raised here in Sweden, for me, this is a deep programming that I believe we all, like everybody, needs to be reminded about many, many times over in order for that to begin changing. Like you said, where are the elders? Where are all the older men?
yeah,
And why aren't they installed to teach us younger men on what it means to be a man?
yeah.
And nobody ever held a conversation with me about any of that,
I know.
and not my father and not his father, and that the broken fatherhood lineage, the role of the elders as well as mothers.
Boys raising boys
Yeah,
raising
yeah, yeah.
boys.
So this is and that I believe is a episode we got to dig much deeper into over the course of this podcast journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanna gently bring this over now to talk a bit about leadership,
Yeah,
because ultimately, I mean, you are a person that has been now involved in the men's movement, not necessarily, but the men's work of Sweden
yeah,
for some time. And I know you cherish leadership as one of the most important qualities and skills. And it's something we do as well in Sculpt. We always talk about learning how to first lead yourself,
mm-hmm.
building your internal leadership, and then once you have that established within yourself, begin to lead others and
Mm-hmm.
learn. Where would you say, just like taking a snapshot of the state of Swedish men's work today, what's happening and what is needed in terms of leadership? What is the next step? What do you see? What do you see happening there?
To answer that, I think I need to go back to my starting point, which was that I was a young father. I became a father at a very early age in my peer group. I was 25, and just as now, I was hanging out with a lot of go-getters, high achievers, entrepreneurs, people who were focused on their careers and their projects and companies and doing a lot of stuff. So uh, having a child at 25 was very lonely. I didn't have any other dads around me. And also at that time, there was no literature. There was basically no discussion. I think I found maybe one book, and it was shit. So I didn't feel supported. I didn't have like a context to ask for support or wisdom. And at that point, my relationship with my dad was basically non-existent. We um, had a lot of friction growing up, and um, we didn't get along a lot of the time, and a lot of the time we did, but I didn't go to my dad for advice. I didn't talk to him about being a father. I didn't respect him, and I was bitter, I was arrogant, I was not in a loving or forgiving or understanding state at all. And when my daughter was born, I saw a lot of shadows in myself. I didn't even know the word back then. Didn't even know the concept of shadows. I just felt a lot of aggression and darkness just, exploding through me. I was annoyed. I was scared. I didn't know what my role was. I saw my daughter and her mother, and they felt so connected. And I went into avoidance. I went out, just, um, kept busy working. And after a while, I was talking. Sorry for that.
Welcome back from the commercial break.
Thank you, Paul Simon. And one day I was talking to a friend of mine, Henrik Wallgren, and we were just sitting on a grassy knoll in Gothenburg, where I grew up, and a friend of his joined us, and he just came back from a weekend, and he started to share what he'd been through. And while listening to him, I heard some of the challenges and the topics that I had been, you know, dealing with within myself, not sharing with anyone because it was a lot of shame around that. And I talked to him about it, and I shared my experience and my difficulties. And he just said, "You need to go. You need to go on this weekend. I think this is perfect for you." And back then, so this is the new warrior training, which is the initiation, the first weekend, the first adventure in an organization called the Mankind Project. And just to give a little bit of background, the Mankind Project was founded in the beginning of, I think, the 80s.
The 80s, yeah.
Yeah. And there were four friends, four American guys who came back from the Vietnam War, and they were just appalled by the atrocities and the unnecessary violence that they saw their brothers impose on civilians and villagers. Like, they acted like animals. And to them, that was not being a warrior. That was being like a darker version or a shadow warrior. So they started to do some research. One of them became a coach. Another one, I think, became a psychologist. One went on the shaman path. And they started to talk about these things. Why is the world like it is? Why is there so much trauma? And where do all the wounds that we men inflict in women, children, ourselves, and in society at large? Because they didn't believe that there's like something fundamentally wrong with being a man. They didn't believe in the like notion of men being born toxic. So they thought about this, and then they realized that, shit, we lost something here along the way. You know, back in the tribe, we had this initiation where boys were actually supported and led to leave boyhood and to become a man. And somewhere along the line, we just forgot. We lost it. And we need to not only reclaim it, we need to reinvent it, because we can't do all of the stuff that we did 10,000 years ago. So maybe we should modernize this, initiation. Maybe we should look at some of the parts, like mutilation was a big part of the initiation from boy to man. Maybe we don't need to cut our pinky fingers. Maybe we don't need to like put ourselves at deadly risk, but it needs to be tough. It needs to be raw. It needs to be um, a real risk. So they started to design this initiation process, and then they came up with this weekend called the New Warrior Training Adventure, which is basically a modernized version of the initiation for a boy to become a man and not have to um, think of all these things himself, not to reinvent the wheel, so to say, but being supported with wisdom and experience, and coming out on the other side, being invited to a community of men, leaders, and elders. And then this other journey starts, which is to start working together for a greater purpose. But you cannot do that if you're a boy. So first you need to become a man, and then you need to connect with other men to serve a greater purpose. But this is in 2013. There was no community in Sweden. There was no men's groups. There was no um, network. So I went to England by myself, not knowing anyone. Just I booked a flight, and they picked me up at the airport in a van, and we just went out in the woods. And as I said in the beginning of the conversation, I rarely think before I do. And I do, and then I'm just scared shitless. And when I jumped out of the van, it was the beginning of 72 hours of just what the fuck. I was scared. I was aggressive. I wanted to kill people. I've never experienced anything like that before. But throughout the weekend, I started to realize a lot of stuff. I started to realize that there's something else. There's a potential. There's something else that is possible for me as a man. I don't need to choose between being a wimp and a fucking asshole. There's a third way, which is actually being a loving warrior and using that power, using that force and that fire to do good, not to hurt people, not to oppress, not to burn down, but to burn together and actually create positive change. So that is what I've been focusing on for the last 10 years regarding men's work, to actually build the community here in Sweden. And now there is a network, a community, and it's growing. And we have our own weekends. And this year we're actually doing 4 weekends, I think. I just saw it in Slack that the board of Mankind Nordic decided to go from 3 weekends to 4 this year because there's so many men wanting to attend. And we started to initiate our first Nordic leaders. We have our own leadership programs. And when you have done the weekend, there's something called I groups that are basically a men's group with a protocol from Mankind Project. So it's not just sitting around a table doing sharing and therapy. There is a portion of that. As I said, we contain multitudes, but it's not the only thing we do. We don't just talk, we do. And what is exciting right now is that there are these networks both in the Nordic countries, but also in Israel, in Germany, in Spain, in Croatia, and all around the world, men are being initiated every weekend. So there's something brewing, there's something, building, and I think it's the perfect point in time to do that, because I think what the world needs right now is exactly that. Not to excuse yourself for being a man, but actually doing it right.
Hmm. Yeah. Your talk here about the need for proper reinstallation, or rather, the need for boys to be initiated into manhood, for that process, that delicate process, to be nurtured in a structured way
By men,
by men.
not women. And I need to be very clear on that. And it's not from a place of criticizing women, it's not from a place of belittling women, it's from a place of experience. As one of our elders, whom I have a great amount of respect for, told us on the last training, women give birth to boys, men give birth to men. So a woman has no knowledge, no experience of what it is to be a man, be a grown up male or adult man. So it's our responsibility to do that and to serve the women in our community with men. That's what we need to do. And what women do in their work is up to them. So it's the same the other way around. They don't need our advice. They don't need us to tell them how to be women, how to grow up from being a girl to become a woman. The only thing we could do and what we need to do is to support them in their journey and ask them for the support and trust while we're doing our job.
Mm. Beautiful. And also there, I love that second step as well, which is collaboration.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I believe a lot of I remember doing the Mankind Project weekend myself, and
What year was that?
it was 2021, maybe 2022.
Yeah, here in Sweden, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
So just a couple of years ago, and
Yeah.
that was some of that inspired me to look into how can we create something which is more also accessible, and how can we build men's work and men's personal development. So a lot of that came into the inspiration for how we then designed the sculpt training, the 100-hour training, which is more focused on, I would say, more a 360 personal development journey,
Yeah.
and less on initiation rites and boys going into men.
Hmm.
But of course, there are a lot of learnings and inspirations there that we brought directly into the sculpt training.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I see it as an ecosystem.
exactly.
So what you guys are doing with Sculpt, and I'm actually I'm actually attending the Sculpt program in end of February, right?
Yes.
For the first time. So I'm really excited and also scared, of course, to do that and to commit to that. It's 60 days, and it's almost like Sculpt could be a gateway to mankind, and mankind could be a gateway to Sculpt. It doesn't need to be a competition.
Oh no.
It's more of a connection to be able to know. So if someone approaches you and you get the sense of maybe this guy needs to do MKP, do the new warrior training first, you can hand him over to us. And when we have men who have been initiated and search for something like more consistent, they need some kind of consistency and stability and structure, we could send them to you guys. So I mean, that's where we need to work together also across the initiatives, right?
Exactly, and the beautiful thing is it's already happening. We have many participants in Sculpt, the 100-hour core enrichment training that we do that come directly from Mankind Project. And
Mm,
what we've noticed also, I mean, looking at this typical Sculpt participant, you have either or. There's usually two types. You
mm,
have your normally like a high performing character, typically like an entrepreneur,
mm.
someone who has achieved success in the material world and is looking for a deeper sense of meaning. Could have also begun to explore longevity, biohacking, ice bathing,
Right. But
breath
yeah,
work,
yeah,
all those things. And through that, kind of just slipped into like, wow, the inner world. So that's one character. And the other character is your typical conscious man, like a man with many years of experience in the world of personal development, possibly even looking to make that into a career path. And what they have is, of course, a deep connection to themselves. However, many of them might have missed out or forgotten about the material aspect of life as
yeah,
well, because they have been so deep into the personal development world
yeah.
for
They're
many
over
years.
feminized. Yeah,
Exactly. So the merger there is beautiful, and many of the guys that came from, your typical successful man, material successful man, have been through the experience of Sculpt introduced to Mankind Project
mm,
and is now going to those trainings.
right.
So it's already happening, and I love the what you're saying there with the ecosystem, men coming together, men working together, because that's really it. Like once you have, I remember feeling that when I started doing men's work properly. It's like, okay, I have this now, but where do I find what can I do?
Yeah. Now
And
what?
what, yeah, now what?
Yeah,
What do I do? How can I activate myself? How can I go from being, we often talk about being, I mean, there's pessimism and optimism, and you can be active pessimist, then you're actually working towards creating destruction for the world, and then you can be a passive pessimist. There we have a lot of people which is pessimistic about life and the world view, but they don't really do anything about it.
yeah,
You have a lot of passive optimists as well
right.
that are hopeful, but they don't do anything.
Yeah,
They just think that the world is going to miraculously become better.
yeah,
And then you have active optimists. And what we're trying to foster and create are more men who come into active optimism.
yeah.
And really, but that also needs um, an introduction to something. Because if I come out with this fire and I look around and I don't understand, what can I actually do? That fire might go away again, and then I just become again a passive optimist.
Yeah. You need to invite them to the arena.
To the
Yeah.
arena, to go in there and to build that support structure as
Mm.
well.
A friend of mine who went too deep into the spiritual rabbit hole, and I've seen this several times before, especially men who misinterpret Buddhism and the Western um appropriation of mindfulness, like the Tex-Mex version of meditation, like you just take the concept, but you don't have the depth. And they believe in these really dangerous notions of emptying yourself and cutting the connection to wanting,
Mm.
cutting the connection to power, cutting the connection to direction. And they believe that this is something positive, and they're reinforced in this over feminized space to become just shells.
Let go, flow, surrender.
And he's deep into depression.
Mm.
He's just depressed, confused, and just all over the place. And I see this all the time, especially in the so to say conscious world. It's not conscious at all. It's just um, it's almost like you buy into this lifestyle. you subscribe to this false notion of being enlightened.
Mm.
And being enlightened is not wanting anything. That's bullshit. That's dangerous. And if you talk to a real Buddhist, they'll answer you the same way. There's nothing virtuous about, being passive. There's nothing virtuous about not wanting anything. There's nothing virtuous about belittling or passivizing yourself, because a big part of being a Buddhist is to be in service of your community. So it's a misinterpretation of detachment,
Mm.
because what they're talking about, what Buddhism is inviting you to, is to detach from your want, not having it, is to detach yourself from your identity, not having it. It's detaching yourself from your ego, but you still need one, because if you don't have an ego, if you don't have an identity, if you don't have a want, you're a perfect victim for cults, psychopaths, and really dangerous ideas. And if you're just an empty shell, well, anyone can fill you with anything. And that's not being a man.
Mm. No, that's definitely not being a man. I was not vibrating from that last at all. Yeah, openness and the fluidity is beautiful, but in a solid structure.
Yeah, but also with some sense of, um, what do you call omdöme in English?
Judgment or
Judge,
discernment.
yeah, some kind of judgment and wisdom
Yeah,
of when and where you open up, when and where and with whom you're vulnerable, and when it's time to close
yeah.
and put boundaries. And if you're not capable of closing your door to your soul, you're bringing that shit to your home and to your kids and to your partner. I mean, you need to. I use something that I call them like pressure points. I search for where it's painful to push, and because sometimes that's what is needed to get a man to wake up, and often I bring the kids in. So I'm like, yeah, so you're curious about this, mindful space, meditation, emptying yourself, not wanting anything, just being this empty shell. So I just wanted to remind you that you're bringing this home to your son,
Yeah.
and then you see him tearing up, and then you start working.
Navid, we have been going for a beautiful, beautiful 1 hour and the 15 now. I have really, truly enjoyed this conversation and its dynamic flow. I mean, we
Mm.
started somewhere in
Fight
talking
Club.
about Fight Club, the need for the dark masculine. We talked about libido, mortido,
Mm.
and then transcended further into your viewpoint of being a man, which is being a tool,
Mm.
or putting
Not that kind of tool, but yeah,
not a tool like a stupid, but basically making yourself into a tool for
yeah,
whatever is
yeah,
necessary.
sure. Don't be a tool.
Exactly. Yeah, and I really enjoyed the way we then transcended further or transitioned into leadership
Mm, me
and
too.
what that is, and really to get a grip on the Swedish men's work situation right now, what's happening, and it's I mean, I'm obviously a part of it, but I'm sure many of the listeners are finding out about this for the first time. There's a movement happening.
Yes.
Men are stepping into
Yeah.
leadership and stepping into growth once more. Taking responsibility is really what it's about. And not only that, not only for themselves, but also there's a network, an ecosystem being built
Yeah.
here, focused on collaboration.
Yeah. And if you're listening to this right now, if you're a man, or if you identify as a boy, or anything close to that, or if you're a concerned partner, sister, mother, friend, colleague, um, you just go into mkpnordic.org, and I think there's a couple of trainings, New Warrior training adventures open at the moment, but they fill up really quick. So make sure that you get the early bird tickets that are a bit cheaper as well. And if you can't afford it, we always have a few options to be able to meet the needs of boys and men who might not have the same economic possibility as you and I. And also, just before we finish this conversation, I enjoyed it as well. I really love the your ability to flow with the conversation and not, being rigid, and but also coming back to what you want to get out of it. I know you haven't been doing this before, right? It's the beginning of your podcast adventure. But I mean, you're fucking awesome. You're really good at this. I really want to give you that, and honor you for that. And connected to our conversation about the tilt to the over feminized, there's a really powerful and inspiring psychologist, American patriarch. I call him a patriarch because he's actually waiting for his fifth kid right now. His name is Adam Lane Smith. And it started out by a friend of mine who sent a podcast to me. I think the podcast is called Modern Wisdom. And it's a great podcast as well. It's similar to other podcasts like the Daily Stoic, the Art of Masculinity, both great podcasts, especially for men. Modern Wisdom, it's the same sphere of finding the tools, finding the abilities, finding wisdom, and learning how to be that masculine Swiss Army knife. So in this episode, Adam Lane Smith, the psychologist, is talking to the podcaster about a lot of different topics which are really relevant to men. They talk about trauma. They talk about ADHD. I mean, you could do a whole podcast series on ADHD right now because there's a lot of things happening in that sphere as well. But one of the topics that inspired me the most and changed my point of view was that notion of that therapy in the Western world right now is designed and based on the feminine. It's about talking through your difficulties on and on and on and on. And also being mirrored with phrases like, you're loved just as you are. You don't need to change yourself. You don't need to do stuff. Which, as a man, when I hear that, I feel like a loser. I feel useless. I feel like people are pitying me, and I go into self loathing. That's not what I need to hear. I need to, of course, be aware of my shadows, be aware of how I can improve myself. But then I need a task. I need a problem to solve. I need something to do. And Adam speaks greatly about this topic and goes into quite some depth about it. I would really recommend that podcast episode, but I would also love to hear Adam here in your podcast. I'm actually being coached by him later this evening for the first time. And we're starting to explore some kind of cooperation between his team and ours to get him to Sweden to do some kind of conference or workshop about being a man
Mm.
and masculine leadership in the Western world. So I'm looking forward to connect you guys.
I would love to have him as part of the show. Definitely. Wow, sounds like quite a man.
Mm.
A lot of potency there.
Oh shit!
Felt like I
Yeah,
was rocked back in my chair when you were talking about him.
yeah.
So
He's great.
yeah,
I'm doing a podcast with him in a couple of weeks.
amazing.
Yeah. So yeah.
Well, with that, I really want to say thank you and also thank you for your wonderful words about me being a podcaster and doing this is feels supernatural and it's also very very interesting because I just realized that there's so much learning.
Right.
Going over these concepts, especially concepts that you think you know, to just hear them from a new perspective or just another person than yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing.
Mm.
So I learned a lot from this, and
Me too. Thank you.
yeah, and I want to thank all the people that sent in the questions for this episode. Uh, Encouraging everybody to keep sending questions, themes, and suggestions for other guests, people you want us to invite. And of course, if you're interested in joining the Sculpt 100-hour core enrichment program beginning on the 26th of February, right now we're doing a lot of one-on-one calls. The way to apply is to go to www.sculpt.center and fill in a form there, and you'll be invited to a one-on-one call with us where we will be it's a screening call really just to see if we're a good match for each other, and it's also an opportunity for you to learn more about what it is that we're doing and the way forward
Mm.
for us. So with that, I thank you listeners, thank you Navid.
Thank you, Fabian.
Amazing.